In 1951, Paula Rome established an organization of teachers in Rochester, Minnesota, who could apply the specially designed instruction that became known as the Orton-Gillingham approach for those struggling with reading and spelling. The informal mission statement in those early days of the Reading Center was to help all who came asking for assistance and to do it at a cost each family could afford.
We achieved a spread of population. It wasn't just the children who were bright, whose parents were well-read, who read about the problem, but it was also the word of mouth that, my son is in school, but and his dad's a carpenter, and that's fine, but I want my son to be able to read even though his father can't.
What started as Paula Rome's crusade to provide educational services grew with the help of Jean Osmond, a gifted teacher and innovator who joined her in 1957. They shared the work and responsibility as it developed into a sizable, thriving, knowledgeable, and caring agency.
Paula asked me if I would like to learn how to work with boys and girls with reading problems, and I responded by saying I never learned any of that, and my college program was a major in psychology, so I didn't know any of it. And she said that was fine, she'd teach me. We sat at Paula's dining room table, and she explained dyslexia, and it was so logical.
Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin, characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition, and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. Dyslexia is not a reading disorder per se. It's a language-based learning disability that occurs when there's a problem in areas of the brain that help to interpret language. According to researcher and neuroscientist Sally Shaywitz, readers with dyslexia have to rely upon a manual rather than on an automatic system for reading. Studies indicate that nearly 1 in 5 may have some degree of dyslexia.
Orton's philosophy was that if you knew how the dyslexic brain worked, and you knew the language and how to program it through, it would eventually work, and the student's ability to hold on to the images of words would improve.
I started in the late fall of 1959 with the Reading Center, and in those days it was in Paula's basement. It just always seemed to me kind of a safe, secure place. I loved going in there.
We took over their basement during the weekdays when the kids were in school, and then we gave them back their rec room after school and on the weekends so they wouldn't resent too much our being down there taking over their space.
I started working at the Reading Center in 1965. I trained with Paula and Jean and Marcia Henry. There really wasn't much in print to read. There wasn't research. There weren't books to help with. So we were writing our own lesson plans and our own reading lists, everything. The fact that Jean and Paula wrote the language toolkit was extremely helpful to all of us who were and still are training teachers.
Orton's original theories back in 1940 said that it was almost as though the right and left hemisphere of the child's brain was arguing over which side was going to be in charge of reading and spelling. And he was right.
Dyslexia is the most common cause of reading, writing, and spelling difficulties. 15 to 20% of the population have a language-based learning disability.
An LD teacher whose third grade son couldn't read was encouraged to take the Orton-Gillingham training. After the first night, which is like 2.5 hours of lecture, she came up to the instructor and said, "I thought I knew the English language. I thought I knew the phonics." She said, "I can't believe what I don't know and what I've not been taught."
I was astounded when I went to Stanford that when I went to look up dyslexia in the education library, I found almost nothing. For many, many years, the term dyslexia has not been used by educators. I'm often told that, well, we can't do anything for dyslexic students because dyslexia isn't mentioned in our legislation.
It's a neurological problem, but the solution is educational. And the most recent exciting research demonstrates that what you do, how you teach a child with dyslexia, changes brain cell organization and makes the brain work more like the intuitive normal reader's brain would work.
Everyone seems to respond to the Orton-Gillingham approach. Adults, children, low IQ, high IQ, kids for whom English is a second language. It just seems to work for those kids who don't learn to read and write automatically.
The term Orton-Gillingham it's an unfortunate label for a way to teach reading, because the question is, what's Orton? What's Gillingham? And it doesn't explain the reading approach, whereas whole language you have a bit of a sense, or the linguistic approach you have a bit of sense. Orton-Gillingham doesn't do that. But it's the only reading approach that's based on the understanding of how the human brain functions. It's a very multisensory, very carefully structured and sequenced phonetic linguistic approach with repetition as long as the child needs it, etc., to teach how the English language works.
The good thing about OG, or Orton-Gillingham, is that it has a very stipulated sequence and formula, but it is very flexible too, and that's the way we were taught to use it.
Dyslexia can affect a person's self-image. Students with dyslexia often end up feeling dumb and less capable than they actually are. After experiencing a great deal of stress due to academic problems, a student may become discouraged about continuing in school.
There's a huge emotional component to dyslexia. I always felt that maybe the primary problem for many of these kids was that they hadn't learned to read, and so that they became, they'd been told they were lazy, they were unmotivated, they were dumb, and maybe eventually you start believing that.
In the 1950s, the city of Rochester proved to be the perfect location for providing and enhancing training to students with dyslexia.
I always thought it was because the two leading businesses in Rochester brought unusually bright people into a community, and then they all interacted. With IBM, the brilliance there in terms of the visual, spatial, the technical, many of those people have huge right hemispheres and maybe a bit of trouble with the left hemisphere with reading and spelling, so they understood. And then with the medical field as well. If they had children that had trouble with reading and spelling, they were looking for answers. Mary Lee Enfield, who went on to develop Project Read in Bloomington, had a student whose problem she couldn't solve. Somebody suggested that they take the child to see Manuel Gomez at the Mayo Clinic, and Manuel Gomez was chairman of the pediatric neurology department. And the family went, and he diagnosed the child as having dyslexia, and he said, go see the ladies at the Reading Center. So Harriet Sheridan was president of Carleton, took her daughter to the clinic, and they suggested the Reading Center. And so from that opportunity, we worked at Carleton College. We learned a tremendous amount working with that population because they were all very bright and could do many, many things.
Jean Osmond and Paula Rome taught a class at Carleton College in Northfield, Minnesota. It was wonderful because we were able to get college credit for it. Another friend and I drove up from Nebraska, and we spent a week there with them, and it was a full day of learning how to pronounce the prefixes, roots, and suffixes, how to categorize long vowel pairs. It was something we had never had in our college training, and we walked out and thought we were walking on air. It was so refreshing. Jean was wonderful. She was so warm and nurturing with the people in the class.
She was a model for all of us. She was very strongly talking about auditory processing difficulties long before it was popular.
When you think of all that she's seen in her years in this field, she's not stuck to any one single paradigm or way of doing things. She always looks at new research and new information. She can always sort of sit back and say, now wait a minute, how does this fit in? Is this all good, or should it be molded or modified in a way that's going to be good for students?
Jean's legacy is the people that she has affected. She is a person who has passion for her family and for the society at large, especially those who struggle with dyslexia.
She has more faith in other people than they have in themselves. So, and I think she has really created a culture in the Reading Center of supporting not only the clients, but the staff, and maintaining a very high standard.
In 1991, the Reading Center, Dyslexia Institute of Minnesota, restructured as a not-for-profit organization, and the official mission statement became "Toward Literacy for All."
Jean Osman, even though she's retired from the Reading Center, still has a complete slate of students. And I mean, there's no better instruction anywhere if you're a dyslexic student.
My daughter Nell is 11 years old and headed into middle school. And when she was in second grade, we started noticing some kind of red flags, I guess. And we kind of talked to the teachers, and they said, no, she was doing fine, and something just didn't feel right. So we took her to Mayo Clinic at the Dana Center and had her tested there, and it was a relief. It really was. It was good to know. It was great to be able to attach something to it and to have a name for it and to be able to have a definition of what she was going to be up against. We decided that we needed to be proactive, and so we had a lot of people that recommended the Reading Center, so we came to the Reading Center. Nell became a different child. She had always kind of been quiet, and she began to blossom, absolutely blossom, and the confidence that she got, Jean just helped inspire her, and she is a completely different kid than she was 3 years ago. She now tests 2 levels above her grade level in reading. The comprehension is a grade or 2 ahead, more than we had ever hoped for, more than we had ever thought would be possible.
When I first started tutoring, I thought it was fun, and so I tutored my younger sister, and she didn't really like it, but I did bribe her with like stickers, or I can't remember. So I'd get her to do like maybe 15 minutes, but it didn't last very long.
The Reading Center has tested and tutored over 7,000 children and adults with dyslexia, and we've trained over 2,000 people in the use of the Orton-Gillingham approach.
The Reading Center is literally known around the world. It is an organization of quality, intelligence, and passion.
I think the Reading Center is the best thing that ever happened to Rochester. People come from all over the United States and even some foreign countries to get the kind of training that is provided there for teachers. And the Rochester's children are so fortunate to have some wonderful tutors.
When Sarah Payne was in the first grade, her parents brought her to the Reading Center.
My mom knew to get me tested at the Reading Center, and I continued with Reading Center tutors from first grade all the way through high school. And it really, it saved me because I was able to understand some strategies, understand the language better, but it allowed me to get into a college because I gained the skills I needed. I went to McAllister College, and I've since gone back to the Reading Center and become a tutor, an Orton-Gillingham tutor. Now my husband and I have 2 girls who are also dyslexic and have benefited from the Reading Center again.
You're seeing a lack of vocabulary emerging very, very rapidly. But then as reading becomes a comprehension exercise, the gap between kids who can read and kids who can't dramatically begins to widen.
One of the quotes that I've always been very impressed with comes from Reed Lyon, and his comment was, "We now know what causes dyslexia. Research has shown us what needs to be done to solve dyslexia, and not to do it as child abuse."
The Reading Center Dyslexia Institute of Minnesota continues the work of its founders today with an impressive track record of tutoring, training, educating the public, and providing leadership in the field of language learning difficulties. It is the only center west of the Mississippi accredited by the Academy of Orton-Gillingham Practitioners and Educators to provide training in the Orton-Gillingham approach. The Reading Center is also accredited by the Academy for providing the highest quality tutoring.
Down the road, if all children are receiving the education they need in the classrooms offered by the public school, then we will celebrate the retirement of the Reading Center. That would be wonderful. The Reading Center, the need for the Reading Center will go on for a long time.